What's good, y'all? 50 wins. Am I insane? The Toronto Raptors, 50 wins. When's the last time that happened? You would have to go back a really long time, and it hasn't happened with Scotty Barnes. Rookie year, Scotty, 48 wins. We remember that. Depleted bench. But that team had something that was going for it, that is currently going for this team. They were trying to win basketball games. Now, this is a big divide in the NBA community about how do you judge teams that are tanking, right? Big conversation on Chill with Chill today was after Lauri Markkanen put up, I think, 48 points yesterday. Well, wait a second. This Lauri Markkanen guy is really good. That all-star selection that he, managed to get 2 years ago, that wasn't a fluke. Lauri Markkanen is a very talented player. This is a player that the Utah Jazz paid a max contract. And last year, you'd be forgiven in thinking that Lauri Markkanen did not look like an all-star. He didn't look like a top 30, top 40 player in the league. All-star means like you're a top 30 player, right? Walker Kessler last year for the Utah Jazz, he didn't look right? He didn't look like a defensive player of the year type. He didn't look like a guy who was worth 2 first-round picks. But the context of the Utah Jazz was they were trying to lose. There are 3 teams in the league last year that were not bad necessarily by necessity, but were bad by intention, by design. Those 3 teams, to me, also happen to employ 3 of the best development coaches, not in the NBA, not in the NBA, not in basketball. Pure, simple, 3 of the best development coaches in the world. That's Jordy Fernandez, that's Will Hardy, and that's Darko Rajakovic. Those 3 coaches. And I want to explore in this conversation why you should probably be a lot more bullish on the Toronto Raptors than Vegas currently is. 37.5 is a joke. Why I believe this team is going to make a very commendable, reputable, respectable run to the top of the Eastern Conference, why they might want to, and what might need to change on this Raptors team, what might need to go right, what do they avoid from going wrong, etc. So hit like, hit subscribe. I ran a poll on Twitter, on X, saying how many games do y'all think? The most prevalent, most popular answer was 40, I think it was 42 to 49. So I think most people agree with uh, this gentleman here. No poll won. Raptors getting 46 to 48, you know. But 50 feels hard, man. 50, you can go down the list. There are not a lot of Raptor teams in NBA, in history that have gotten 50 wins. But why might the Raptors get 50 wins? Let's start with the addition of Brandon Ingram. I think the Toronto Raptors addressed their biggest hole. Now, a lot has been made about the Orlando Magic addressing their biggest hole, right? The reason people have Orlando and Atlanta finishing above the Raptors is because they believe that Kristaps Porzingis and Desmond Bane address major holes on those rosters. Okay, I get that. Question mark. Didn't the Toronto Raptors do the exact same thing by trading for Brandon Ingram? They didn't lose anything to get Brandon Ingram. I mean, they lost a now valuable first round pick and they lost Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk, but I don't really think they lost anything of actual substance to get him. So you just added Brandon Ingram, a $40 million, borderline max player, former all-star, who just so happens to fit your biggest weakness, which is half-court creation. So let's start there. I think Brandon Ingram is a much better player than NBA circles currently are giving him credit for. Okay. So beyond Brandon and his impeccable fit on this team, I do think that Scotty Barnes is a legit star. And the reason that Atlanta and Orlando are picked to finish ahead of the Raptors, the reason why a lot of people have the Miami Heat ahead of the Raptors, is because I believe league-wide there's a little bit more respect for guys like Paolo, Franz, Trae Young, and frankly, even LaMelo Ball than there is for Scotty Barnes. It's almost like Scotty Barnes and Lauri Markkanen got washed away into the development reps last year. People just assume maybe the All-Star thing was a fluke. Here to remind you, it was not a fluke. Those two legitimately are really top 30, 35 talents in the league. I think with the case of Scotty, because him being younger, I think he could be a lot better than a top 35 player. I think he could be a top 20 player in the league this year. I think he could be a top 15 player in the league. I think he could push for all NBA. I'm on record saying I think he's going to be all NBA third team this year. So even if Scotty Barnes is not going to lead the Raptors in scoring this year, unless something very, very weird happens, I do think he can be their best player, and be the best player on a 50-win team is very much all NBA, right? Most players who are the best player, definitively the best player on a 50-win team are all NBA. That's how you make all NBA. So I think Scotty's being a little bit slept on. And then I look at the ancillary pieces around. How many teams, legitimately, look around the league, how many teams that you have finishing outside the playoffs have a third, fourth, and fifth best player better than Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, and Jakob Pertl? I don't care which order you put those in. Some people say it's Yak, then Quickly, then RJ. Some people say it's RJ, then Yak, then Quickly. I really don't care. I'm saying those three as your third, fourth, and fifth best players. How many teams have third, fourth, and fifth best players better than those three players? Again, not a lot. Not a lot of teams that you have finishing, with 37 wins. So I think those guys are pretty slept on as well. I mean, we've seen Jakob cooking up with us, Austria. We've seen, last year we saw RJ Barrett be a better player functionally than Jamal Murray was for Team Canada. We've seen, spurts and bits of Emmanuel Quickly being a much better player than he was in New York, even if the reputation hasn't been as much as it is in New York. I just think there's a part of being on a 30-win team and being very injured throughout the year. But I think Emmanuel Quickly led the entire league in games missed due to rest. That matters to me. That matters a lot to me because when you rest, you fail to get rhythm. Now, the Toronto Raptors were not trying to win basketball games last year. I think that is clear to everybody. People who saw them resting perfectly healthy guys in the fourth quarter, people who saw them alternating. You had games with Quickly and Yak, and then you had games with RJ and Scotty, and then you had games with Yak. You almost never got to see the full thing, fully out, right? And as much as you want to say about, well, the defense got better when Grady missed time and Grady's going to play minutes and the defense is going to go downhill, et cetera, et cetera. I think we can all agree that Grady Dick was better than Cole Swider, Colin Castleton, Orlando Robinson, and a lot of the players who played ahead of him last year when he was out. So I think so the first thing is obviously the addition of BI. The second is the underrating of Scotty. The third thing is the supporting cast. The fourth thing is the development of some of these younger players. Now, of course, between the ages of, I think, 16 and about 26, 27, growth is expected, but not necessarily linear, right? You see jumps sometimes from players that are very unexpected jumps, right? And sometimes these jumps come a little bit later on that timeline. Sometimes they come much earlier in that timeline. Luca took his jump when he was 18, 19. I don't think he's taken as big a jump since then. But there are other players. There are other players, even LeBron James. I think he took a jump around 20 and then he took another jump around 25. Scotty Barnes has taken a couple of jumps from Florida State rookie year, then the second year to third year jump. Maybe there's another jump in there. Jacoby, we don't know. He could have a sophomore slump where he shoots terribly next year. Ochai could have a breakout season. Grady could have a breakout season. My point is not necessarily that any one of these individual players is going to be an all-star. My point is that any one of them could morph into a much better player than you think they're going to become. Now, this is wishful thinking. This is like, oh, the guys are young, so they're going to get better. Yeah, sure. There is an element of that. But then there's also the fifth factor, which is you do have one of the best development staffs in the league. Make no mistake about it. Jama and Darko, these two specifically, I could definitely heap some praise on Evo and some of the other guys as well. But these two specifically, I'm talking for the last 6 years in the league. Whenever you talk to scouts, you talk to them about the best development coaches in the league. These two names always came up. Jama, Darko, Jordy. There were several. There's a lot. Will Hardy is one of them. There's a lot of names. There's about 10, 12 names that come up. There aren't a lot of teams that are spearheaded by two development coaches. And the Raptors sincerely have put all full force into this. You don't know if Colin Murray Boyles is just way better than expected. You don't. But betting on, arguably, again, this is an arguable statement, but let me try to make the statement without being totally a homer towards Colin Murray Boyles. I can make a very coherent argument that the SEC last year, which included teams like South Carolina, which was not very good, and teams like Florida, which were very good, I can argue that was the greatest conference in college basketball history, men or women's. It was stacked from top to bottom. It was deep. It was extremely competitive. And not being a good team in that conference doesn't mean very much. You probably would have dominated other conferences. It's just, unfortunately, conference play dictates a lot of where you're standing. And someone has to be bad in a really strong conference. I think the SEC was basically, to those who don't follow college basketball, it was basically what the Western Conference in the NBA right now is, but more than that. It would be like what the West is if right now the Utah Jazz and the Cleveland Cavaliers swapped conferences. Now, what are we doing here, right? That's what the SEC was. So I can make a very strong case that Elijah Martin and guys like Colin Murray Boyles come from the strongest conference, which is to say, those are the teams they faced. And I could make a very coherent argument that Colin Murray Boyles was the best player in that conference. It's not a clear-cut case. There are several names that you can go to, but he's one of them, easily. Okay, so that's like what, your eighth guy? That's your eighth guy? An NBA ready, physically dominant, evolving shooter with great playmaking, incredible defensive upside. Is anyone here going to tell me that it is impossible for him to replicate the defensive impact of a Herb Jones or a Scotty Barnes as a rookie? I'll tell you right now, as a huge Scotty Barnes fan of Florida State, Colin Murray Boyles is a better defender than Scotty Barnes was at Florida State. Straight up. I think he's better. I don't think his upside is nearly as high as Scotty Barnes, but if I'm just straight up, no implication of NBA at all, I'm just looking at player for player, Colin Murray Boyles, South Carolina, Scotty Barnes, Florida State. I think Colin Murray Boyles was a better player last year than Scotty Barnes was in 2020, 2021. So for you to completely write off Colin Murray Boyles as a red shirt or a non-factor, you would have to assume that the dude is not getting better right now. And he happens to be blessed for the same reason that Jacoby's blessed, same reason that Grady Dick is blessed, same reason that RJ and BI and all these guys are blessed, which is to say that they have found themselves in a great development system. And if anyone is going to unlock Colin Murray Boyles, it's probably going to be Darko Rajakovic. It's probably going to be Java Malalela. And it's probably going to be this system. So these are some factors to get excited about. There are some other factors to get excited about, potential breakout candidates, which include Sandro Mamukelashvili, who I think, honestly, gives the Raptors a type of player that they really haven't had. You could argue Kelly Olynyk was that type of player, but obviously, I think Sandro brings something that Kelly didn't. And then there is two very important factors for three important factors for team success. And I'm going to knock them out one at a time. Number one, strength of conference. The Raptors are in a very poor conference. I do not think the Raptors are contenders at all. I would bet my house that they're not going to win an NBA championship this year. I don't bet, but it's a very clean bet that you're not getting a championship this year, and you're probably not going to make it to the finals, and you're probably not going to make it to the conference finals. But could you make it to the conference semis? Yeah, you could. Based on the strength of conference alone, you can make it to the conference semis. We have seen 3 players go out completely. Think about what happened last year between the East and the West. Now, the East was already much weaker than the West last year. The West got way stronger this year. Not only did the top 2 picks in the NBA draft go to the Western Conference, not only did 3 of the best players from the Eastern Conference go down with Achilles tears in Damian Lillard, Tyrese Halliburton, and Jason Tatum, not only did some of the best players from those teams get torn out and pushed into the Western Conference, case in point, Brook Lopez going to the West, Drew Holiday going to the West. You're seeing this, right? You took back some, I think, worse players from the West going to the East, like Anthony Simons, Drew Holiday. That swap is easily in favor of Drew Holiday. So not only is that clearly an advantage for the West getting better, the top two picks, as I mentioned, going to the West, Ace Bailey going to the West, Jeremiah Fears going to the West, Carter Bryant going to the West. A lot of teams, I think, in the West hit. And then in the East, I think you had some of the more questionable lottery picks in the East, right? Con Knippel's fine, for sure. Kaman Malawach goes to the West, right? Derek Queen goes to the West. A lot of good players in this draft went towards the Western Conference, and I think that that will further stretch the disadvantage that the Eastern Conference has. But I think that it is also important to realize that while, yes, Desmond Bane did come to the East, I do get that, and Orlando did definitely get better, and Orlando may be one of those teams that pushes 55, 60 wins this year. On the whole, the gap has widened between East and West, largely due to injuries. Let's also not forget that the second best player in the Eastern Conference when he's healthy is out and possibly is going to be medically retired, and that's Joel Embiid. The best player in the Eastern Conference, which is Giannis Antetokounmpo, is now on a worse team than he was on last year. Swapping out Brook Lopez for Miles Turner while losing Damian Lillard makes you worse. It makes you exponentially worse. So the best player in the conference is on a worse team. The second best player in the conference is possibly medically retired. The third best player in the conference has torn his Achilles, which is Jason Tatum. Do you see the point? It's getting depleted. Add in that the surprise team in the Eastern Conference last year, which was the Detroit Pistons, in my opinion, got worse. Malik Beasley is a huge loss. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a huge loss. Tobias Harris is not getting younger, and I promise you, as much as you want to credit the winning, the major winning uptick that they took, Dennis Schroeder was a part of that winning. Malik Beasley was a part of that winning. Tim Hardaway Jr. was a part of that winning. Gone, gone, gone. Dennis Schroeder, West. Malik Beasley, probably prison. And Tim Hardaway Jr., West. The Denver Nuggets, they stacked. Cam Johnson, one of the best players in the Eastern Conference last year, who I was pushing for us to get. West, he is gone. Michael Porter Jr. is in his place. He is worse. You get the point. It's just depletion, depletion, depletion. I don't know what the Brooklyn Nets are doing, but I promise you they're going to be worse this year. I don't know what the Chicago Bulls are doing, dragging out this Josh Giddey situation. They do not look like they're going to be competitive. They drafted Noah Senge, who's probably 2-3 years away. They didn't draft Nick Clifford or, Cedric Howard, where you could really sell yourself on, okay, maybe this turns around really quickly. Noah Senge has some time to go. Indiana, I think they did get a replacement for Miles Turner and Jay Huff, but overall, I think the case has been made quite well to this point in this live that the East has weakened. So let's talk about the other thing that I was going to say. Well, not only, the conference play around you, but what about a continuity? Continuity is such a huge part of early success when you are ahead of the curve. Now, again, it doesn't always work out, obviously. The Raptors in 22-23 were supposed to be way better than the 41 wins they got. That team was supposed to push 50 plus wins. They massively underachieved, and Fred VanVleet was gone, Nick Nurse was gone, everything fell apart. But that was a 41 win team. They blew up a 41 win team because it underachieved. But it underachieved primarily because it was supposed to be much better. Why was it supposed to be better? Continuity. You brought everybody back. You have a head start. Look at some of the teams that are projected to come out of the Eastern Conference. Lonzo Ball is going to be a huge part, if he's healthy, of what Cleveland does. He wasn't there last year. I understand that you could say the same thing about the Raptors implementing Brandon Ingram, Colin Murray Boyles, but CMB is a really smart player, and Brandon Ingram has been with this team since All-Star break last year. Or the trade deadline last year. So he's had a chance to work with his teammates. And even if we haven't seen a game of him on an NBA court, he's also had a lot of time to build that sort of chemistry off the court, understand the system. He's not new to this. He's not going to be new to this, and also happens to be a really smart player himself. Sandro Mamukelashvili, also a really smart player. You're implementing 3 players into your upper rotation who are really smart. And the Raptors are, in my opinion, doing a much better job than most teams of building chemistry and doing work throughout the offseason. You probably, if you follow them on social media, you see the Toronto Raptors. They're in Germany, they're in Greece, they're in Spain, they're doing this stuff. They're all together. You see Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel quickly playing soccer. You see Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shed out in Houston. The entire offseason is being used in a way that, frankly, most teams don't do it this way, right? Most teams do not have this much focus on togetherness, development, chemistry building throughout the offseason. It just doesn't work this way. Okay. You let people go, maybe an assistant coach will visit them. They're working with their trainers, and then you come together in training camp. But the Raptors have a completely different approach because their guys are super young. Most of their guys are together. Maybe Grady's off, doing his own thing. Maybe Colin Murray is off doing his own thing, but they bring them together, and your main guys are together. So now, the other thing, which is just team chemistry. I think for most people who watched this team 2 years ago, you could argue this was the most dysfunctional team in the league. Not a team that looked like they liked being around each other, not a team that looked like they enjoyed playing for each other, fighting for each other. And to anyone who's ever played sports, I promise you that caring about your teammates, understanding your teammates, having good relationships with your teammates is a good part of, at least it is almost always going to be part of the cocktail that helps you exceed expectations going in. Now, I think about teams that actually exceeded expectations, and I think back to the 06-07 Raptors with Jorge Garbajosa, Anthony Parker, TJ Ford, those additions coming in for the previous iteration. The Raptors blew expectations open. Andrea Bargnani coming in, Uroš Slokar, it was Rasho Nesterovic. Like, I love that team primarily because of how unselfishly they play basketball. You look at the Scotty Barnes rookie season, like that team went from really bad to really good. But did they really go from really bad to really good? Or did they go from tanking to no, we're not tanking anymore? And that's the other part of this. The Raptors were trying to lose last year. I think we all know that, but they're not trying to lose anymore. Now, to those of you who say, well, I'm not really sure Scotty Barnes is a franchise player, and I'm not really sure that Emmanuel Quickley is worth 32.5 million. I'm not sure what RJ Barrett's role in this is. I'm not sure Grady or Jacoby or Colin Murray Boyles or Ochai or anyone is going to work out to that mega level. Why don't the Raptors just tank? Well, one, I don't think they're bad enough to tank, especially with the Brandon Ingram addition. I really don't think you're bad enough to tank unless he misses an entire season, touch wood. But also because at some point you do have to turn it around. You got to turn it around. I talk about championship windows a lot. I have talked about this many times. Timing this shit out is hard as hell. We've seen the Oklahoma City Thunder. They did it perfectly. They built up with Shea. They lost a lot of games. People are like, what are y'all doing with all these draft picks? Come on, try to be better. Try to be better. Why aren't you looking for this? Why aren't you looking for that? And then in one offseason, they add two very crucial members of a championship core, which is Isaiah Hardenstein and Alex Caruso. And suddenly it's a very different situation. Josh Giddey is out. Maybe they don't have to part with any of the draft picks. They really, they lose Nikola Topic for the entire year. Now, this year, they're set to repeat again. In my opinion, they are definitely the favorites to repeat again. But don't forget, 3 years ago, people were running down Sam Presti's throat like, what are y'all doing? Why are y'all trying to lose games? Why are you resting guys? Why are you taking on these contracts? Why are you, sitting Al Horford and this and that and whatever? But they were developing. And that's what the Raptors have taken a note from. Most intelligent teams are going to start tanking this way, and that's what the Utah Jazz, Raptors, and Nets did last year, because it's not really tanking, it's development. I don't know if there's a term for it. It's not tanking, it's danking. We're calling it danking. I don't know. Development tanking. It is completely different than we're just going to go outright and try to throw away games. No, we're actually going to put guys in positions that they're not ready to take, knowing damn well they're going to be really bad at it. An example of danking, or whatever you want to call it, would be, having Scotty Barnes launching a whole bunch of pull-up threes from the top. I know you're not good at it, but go do it. This year, if I wanted to dank with this team, maybe I would have Jakob Poeltl doing a lot of mid-range stuff, right? Sure, why not? Maybe I'd have Emmanuel Quickley doing a lot of, on-ball creation, even though I know that there are other players who are better at it. Maybe I do RJ Barrett. Hey, I know you catch and shoot guy. I know you can hit off the catch and shoot. I want to see you hit off the move. Grady Dick, I know you're a movement shooter who hits a lot from the elbows and the corners. I want to see you, launching above the break. Again, like, taking away a guy's efficient zones. Like last year, we saw Ochai Agbaji kill it from the corners. If I really want to screw up his year this year, which is a contract year for him, I just tell him we're banning corner threes from you. We're going to do above the break. Now, again, you say, why would you do this? Why would anyone? Why would anyone want to do this? And this is a conversation we had on Chill with Chill. I asked Chill, what is your great strength as a player? What is your biggest weakness as a player? He told me his greatest strength was that he was a good transition player and he wasn't a very good three-point shooter. He was a good on-ball defender, but he wasn't the greatest post defender. And so I said, okay, boom. If I want to win basketball games, I'm using you in transition. I'm using you as a cutter. I'm using you as a burn cutter. I'm using you as a transition threat. But if I want to lose games, I'm putting the ball in your hands for 3-point looks. I know you're not going to make them, but 3 years from now, hopefully we both know either A, you got better, or B, you can't do it, and now I could trade you. I think that's kind of how the Raptors approached it, but that's not the way they're going to approach it this year. And so the question becomes why? Why does Toronto want to turn it around this year? And I think they want to turn it around this year because they have to turn it around some point. And why not turn it around now? You don't know what's going to happen with Tyrese Halliburton post Achilles tear. You really don't. You have no idea because obviously they made that trade with Pascal Siakam to be competing for the next 3-4 years. Maybe the Siakam contract ages worse than you think, and Indiana suffers. They've already lost Miles Turner. They're obviously banking on Jarris Walker and Benedict Mathurin. So you see some window, at least, right? You see a window to contention that goes above Indiana, right? If Halliburton is not himself, if Mathurin doesn't work out, Andrew Nembhard's a little bit older, Siakam ages poorly, that's a team that's probably going to have to rebuild at some point. Consider also the Boston Celtics. Again, a lot of questions, right? They've already parsed out so much talent because of money. Will they additionally need to parse out even more talent because of money? Because they're still a luxury tax team. What about, right? The Atlanta Hawks. Kristaps Porzingis. Questionable situation coming up with Trae Young. Are you this high on Jalen Johnson? Are you this high on Zach Ricochet? Because if you're not high on either one of those players, I don't really see what window those guys have towards contention. Really, the teams you're looking at, Orlando, which I could certainly see it. Orlando could be a powerhouse, but it depends on Jalen Suggs' health, Desmond Bane's fit, and they are very expensive and very soon to be a second apron team. Consider also the New York Knicks, older, aging, undersized guard. Yeah, Mikal Bridges is very overpaid. I think maybe they top out this year and then they start to regress a little bit. They don't have a lot of draft picks. They don't have a lot of young players coming up. So maybe they start to take a step back. So now you start to look at the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Orlando Magic as the teams to beat in the Eastern Conference for the next 2-3 years. Maybe Philly takes a surprising step. Maybe, something miraculous happens with VJ Edgecombe and Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey. But I'm saying realistically, Orlando, Cleveland are the teams to beat. You could throw Detroit in there if you're really, really high on Cade and Jaden Ivey and Asar Thompson. But these are the teams you're pushing up against. At some point, if you want to win in Toronto, you're going to have to beat these teams. You're going to have to be better than these teams. And in order to be better than these teams, you can't do it all in one season. You cannot turn the whole thing around in one season. And I think that's something that the Raptors have done very well, which is they've approached things from a multi-season approach. There's no one season approach with Grady. There's no one season approach with Scotty. It's not like okay, well, we'll live and die on for this year. We're trying to make an all-star this year, trying to chase the Supermax this year. No, this is a multi-year approach to development, team-wise and player-wise. And so you take this jump now. And what is this jump? This jump is be a playoff team. Get to the playoffs, either have home court or be damn near home court, 48, 52 wins, push for that. Now, once you get to the playoffs, now who are you facing? Maybe you're facing a Giannis. Maybe you're facing a New York. Maybe you're facing an Indiana team that was surprisingly better with Andrew Nembhard and Pascal Siakam on his twilight, or not twilight, but the last year of his peak. Maybe you're facing a Detroit, Cade versus Scotty. That should be fun. Or maybe, you're a little bit lower and you're facing a, upstart Orlando team or a Cleveland team. In either case, this is experience that this team needs. Colin needs it. Scotty and BI need it. IQ needs it. You need it. You need it to be able to evaluate your players fairly in this context. You and I have one thing in common. None of us know what this team can do in the playoffs. None of us know that Jacoby is a playoff faller, a riser, that Grady becomes a different dude in the playoffs, that Scotty is capable of, putting up 20, 10, and 10 in the playoffs, or 30, 10, and 10 in the playoffs. We don't know if Brandon Ingram unlocked away from Willie Green and into the Darko system, finally fiending on efficient offense and efficient looks, can't be in completely different conversations as a basketball player. ESPN Nate's IKD saying, I want Detroit round one, Rob. That would be fun. That would be fun. Asar, Scotty, Cade, Scotty, that whole thing. That would be really fun. Jaden Ivey. I have questions about Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham long-term fit. And I actually think that their success last year happened to occur with Jaden Ivey in street clothes. And I think that could be questionable. Whoa. Anyways, so overall, I think if you're the Toronto Raptors, you're buying into Scotty Barnes. You're buying into Scotty Barnes. You clearly think this guy is a franchise player, and the league is just sleeping on it. So what you're looking at is 2027 onward. We got to make an ascent. We got to make a rise. And it's a little bit like tipping something over, right? Like tipping over a heavy object is like what it takes to win in the playoffs. You're probably not going to do it in one fell swoop. Maybe if right now you trade RJ, Emmanuel quickly, and every first round pick for the next 40 years, and you get Giannis or Jokic, now maybe you can topple it over in one. But until you get a player of that caliber, which is, the example I'm thinking is Boston Celtics in 08 when they got Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, unless you get a player of that MVP caliber, it's not a 1 year turnaround. It's usually a multi-year turnaround. And I think the Raptors have taken their deep breath, right? They've torn it back. They've done the evaluation. They understand a little bit about their players. They've given them the quote unquote free reps that Fred VanVleet hated so much. And after doing that, they have a better understanding of their team, but also now it's time to actually go out and win basketball games. And I do think if you've ever played on a team that's actually playing for something versus playing for a team that's already been eliminated from contention, you know that the doggedness and the execution and the attention to detail and the practice intensity is very different when you're actually aiming to win things. And I think that when the culture and the focus and the talking points in your team meetings, in your team dinners, in your shoot arounds, in your team buses and your bus rides and your plane rides all go towards playoffs, as opposed to development, you might see a different Scotty Barnes emerge. You might see a different Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett emerge, and you certainly will see a different Brandon Ingram emerge. These players all have a lot to prove. A lot to prove. Grady has been written off by many, many people already due to a somewhat pedantic downturn second season. I don't think most people are talking about him as a potential star in the league. But make no mistake, he sees himself as one. He was a former Gatorade National Player of the Year who, by some estimates, was a consensus top 10 pick. And he falls to 13, and now he's just kind of fallen out of NBA lexicon. People aren't talking about him unless they're mentioning his last name as a joke. So he's got a lot to prove. Emmanuel Quickly. The only thing I hear about Emmanuel Quickly in NBA circles is I can't believe the Raptors paid Emmanuel Quickly $32.5 million. I think Emmanuel Quickly's got a lot to prove, and he's certainly a player with a lot of pride. Colin Murray Boyles, right? A lot of people, dissect the can't shoot. Did the Raptors reach for him at number 9? Should have gone a little bit later. They should have picked Asenge. They should have picked Kaman. They should have picked Carter Bryant. I think he's got a lot to prove. I think he's got a ton to prove. And I think that he is someone who has proven year out of year that he is an underdog and he is an overachiever. He has overachieved every level of his life. And why would you bet against him overachieving in the NBA? Jonathan Mobo has a lot to prove. I think a lot of people have already written him off as, can't score, zero level offensive player, etc., defense only. He's got a lot to prove. Jamal Shedd's got a lot to prove, right? This is your identity. This whole thing is your identity. You have lumped together a bunch of underdogs who have a sincere uh, image problem in the NBA. Brandon Ingram is not seen the way he sees himself. You don't understand what I'm saying? There's nothing more disturbing than having the whole world look at you as someone that you're not. I don't think this team sees themselves as losers. I don't think they identify as losers. There's something that, you look at the Charlotte Hornets last year, and I'm like, that's a team of losers. They know they're losers. They identify as losers. They breathe, eat, sleep like losers. I don't think the Raptors, I don't think there's a single player on this team that I think is a loser. These players are all winners, bro. This is a team that is just full of winners that have lost a lot over the last few years. Scotty Barnes is a winner through and through. Grady Dick, RJ Barrett, these are winning players. These are players who like to win. These are players who, dream of winning, think about winning, practice to win. And they've lost a lot. And so they become a little bit underrated. But Brandon Ingram is not a losing player. You know what I mean? Like there's certain players where I gotta tell you, like I think hopefully we've all played with them where losses just kind of rub off of them. They don't really care. It's not a really that big a deal. It's just another day at the office. Then there are players that losses just piss them off. Like they just really don't like it. I think about fierce competitors like Michael Jordan. I think about Isaiah Thomas. And I'm not saying any of these guys are Isaiah and Michael, but I'm saying there's just certain players that don't deal well with losing. Jalen Green is not a player like that. Cam Thomas is not a player like that. I don't think these guys care if they're on a 40-win team or 50-win team. I mean, I'm sure they prefer to be on a 50-win team, but it's not desperate. I think with Scotty Barnes, it's desperate. I think with Emmanuel Quickly, it's desperate. I think these guys, they take it personally that they're on a losing team. I think they take it personally that people are picking them to, win 37 games. I think they take it personally that they are not ranked where they think they should be ranked. Because look, Emmanuel Quickly, he thought of himself as a $25 million player. And the Knicks said, go fuck yourself because Jalen Brunson is our $25 million player. You're not getting paid as much as Jalen Brunson. But this is obviously a person who has great vision for himself. And, as much as you want to shit on Emmanuel Quickly's contract, bro, trust me, I know some people around this dude, and they say of every NBA player, this guy's a top 5 worker in the whole league. Like there's nobody who takes their craft more seriously, and his growth is coming. You got to wait for it, but it's going to come. And it's just like there's certain players like that where it's just like it comes slowly, slowly, slowly. And then one day the floodgates open and suddenly you're talking about them like Jalen Brunson. And it's like, what's more like, is it crazy to think Emmanuel Quickly could become a top 10 point guard in the league? I don't think it's crazy at all. I don't think it's crazy at all. I don't think it's crazy to think Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram can become all-stars. I really don't think that. I don't think it's crazy to think that Jakob Poeltl can take a step this late in his career. Obviously, all of these things are not going to happen, but any one of them definitely could, and multiple of them definitely could. Again, I don't think it's crazy to think that Grady Dick could be a 14, 15 point per game scorer off the bench. I really don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's crazy for Ochai or Jacoby or Colin Murray-Boyles. I mean, maybe Colin Murray-Boyles 15 points is a little ambitious. He'd have to start for that to happen, but you get my point. There's a lot that can go right for the Raptors, and there's obviously a lot that can go wrong. Let's talk about what can go wrong. Well, obviously, if the Scotty and BI stuff doesn't work, you're pretty cooked, right? And that's a proof of concept. If your two best players cannot play together, you're in trouble. Everything else we can work around through creative lineup shifts. But if your two best players, which is conceivably at least, or in theory, the two players who are going to definitely dominate the minutes, touches, possessions, usage, if those two players are oil and water in terms of chemistry, if they don't like each other, if they don't fit, if they're not a synergistic fit, if they're not a defensive fit, if they get on each other's way on offense, it can be a little bit tricky. And there's at least a potential that these two players don't know how to play with each other. Now, there's some things going in their favor, obviously. Both are multi-positional. Both are really good playmakers. Both are really good in the mid-range. Both are really tall, long, and fact is, they're both extremely smart. They're good basketball players. They're good players, and they both have incredible off-ball skills. Maybe not the same off-ball skills, but that's a good thing. There's some yin and yang here. Brandon Ingram, shout out to S. Vandiar Barhaney from Raptors Republic and The Athletic. He brought up, that that Brandon Ingram over the last few years was 40% on catch and shoot threes. That's great. Scotty Barnes is a great role finisher. He's not a player that took a lot of generated possessions last year. But you will notice the year that he became an all-star, 80% of his offense, 70% of his offense, 60% of his offense was being manufactured by Dennis Schroeder or Gary Trent or OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam or one of those guys. Like it was all being created for him, right? And he thrived because Scotty gets easy baskets. Scotty's like Anthony Davis in that sense, right? He gets a lot of easy baskets. He's not necessarily the greatest at generating the hard baskets, and that's where Brandon Ingram comes in. Brandon Ingram, on the other hand, is a completely multifaceted player who maybe has too many options on any given play to make the right decision at any given time. He also played in a very stagnant offense last year. In the last 4 years under Willie Green, however long he's played there with Willie Green, I don't think he's ever really done great in terms of. I've never watched a Brandon Ingram game and be like, that's perfectly how I would use Brandon Ingram. It's very rare. And I think the Raptors intend to unlock him in a more streamlined approach towards scoring. So use him more on the ball to create his own scoring opportunities, off the ball to catch and shoot, and just make him a much more efficient player. Do what they did for RJ Barrett, which is to say, not that Brandon Ingram is obviously a much better player than RJ Barrett. Cut out some of the fat, trim the fat from his game, trim out some of the fat from his game, and make him generally a more efficient player with better moving targets. Again, very often, if you watch the Pelicans the last few years, you'll see Brandon Ingram dribbles, 4 guys stand around, or 1 guy's parked in the paint. Nobody's spacing out for him. What if this year you could run a death lineup with Scotty Barnes at the 5 and Brandon Ingram at the 4 and, Jacoby, Grady, IQ? Like, that's great. That's the type of team that he's never had around him. He's never played with a player quite like Scotty Barnes. The closest thing he's played with a Scotty Barnes is Lonzo Ball. And quite frankly, the last time Scotty played with a player like Brandon Ingram, it was Pascal Siakam. Well, you know what? Brandon Ingram was an all-star when he played with Lonzo Ball. Scotty Barnes was an all-star the last full year that he actually played with Pascal Siakam. There's a good reason to believe that these two will work very well. So there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the Raptors. There's another reason to be optimistic about the Raptors. And this is the one that I don't think enough people are talking about. Now, all offseason, I have maintained this position that the Raptors are a consolidation trade away from making this really work. And some targeted players for those consolidation trades have been guys like Malik Monk, guys like Lauri Markkanen, previously prior to him getting traded, Cam Johnson. These are players that I thought worked better in the system than someone like RJ Barrett. The Raptors have shown you every single trade deadline for the last 4 years that they will make a trade. They made a trade for Thaddeus Young, trade deadline. They made a trade in Tampa for Gary Trent Jr. They made a trade for Jakob Poeltl the next year after that. Last year, they made a trade for Brandon Ingram at the trade deadline. This is a team that likes to do business in the offseason, despite what I believe Masai Ujiri once said about, we prefer to make trades in the offseason. They don't. Actually, they don't. They prefer to drag shit out till the trade deadline, see where they're at, get the maximum flexibility, and then capitalize to see if some team out there is desperate. And I believe that some team out there will be desperate because some team out there thinks that they're a playoff team right now. I'm looking at you, Sacramento Kings. I'm looking at you, Boston Celtics. I'm looking at a lot of teams, frankly. Boston Celtics, Indiana Pacers, San Antonio Spurs. There's a lot of teams that could be worse than they think they're going to be right now. I don't think Houston is one of them, so you can, wipe out any thoughts you might have about Jabari Smith. But maybe the Utah Jazz, are trying to bottom out, and they see it as they exhibit Lauri Markkanen for half a season, and then let the cards roll where they are. Maybe Jonathan Kuminga plays out. Maybe he takes the qualifying offer, not the qualifying offer. He takes the 2-year deal from the Warriors, and then there's a situation where he is able to be traded at the trade deadline after December 15th. I think the Raptors will be buyers at the trade deadline, and that is how I'm going to get to 50 wins. I don't think this roster as constructed is going to win 50 wins. I think this roster as constructed is probably on pace to win like 43 to 45 wins. I think at the trade deadline, once they have a proof of concept that Scotty plus BI works, that Emmanuel quickly can work, that Grady and Jacoby or one of maybe two of their backup guards or backup players have taken a leap. I think once they have a clear understanding of that, then I think they will finally make the trade. And I think that trade will include a future first round pick. It might include two first round picks. We really don't know what a Bobby Webster front office looks like. We haven't seen one. Maybe it was Masai. That's the other thing. Like with Bobby and Masai, you never know like who was in charge of what. We've heard rumblings that the Brandon Ingram thing was more of a Masai thing. Okay, well maybe Brandon Ingram is on the move for something at the trade deadline for an upgrade. And maybe you're attaching a couple first round picks because he shows that he's healthy. And in return, you get a De'Aaron Fox. I don't know if that's the trade. I'm not saying that's the trade. I'm just saying maybe you view somebody like a Lauri Markkanen as an upgrade on Brandon Ingram and you're willing to throw in a first round pick. I don't necessarily think that's true. And I don't think that's going to happen. But things of that nature. RJ for Malik Monk would be, in my opinion, an upgrade. I think it would be an upgrade. I think Malik's a better player. So there are moves that can be made. I think the great target, if I'm the Raptors right now, is someone like a Tamani Kamara or Herb Jones. I think you're desperately in need of one of those players, one of those defensive lockdown type of wings. And you could make it work. Either way, I think it'd be hard for the Raptors, especially if Bobby Webster is as genius about the cap as we've been told he is, to assume that you're going to be able to extend Ochai, Grady, and Jacoby long term. You're probably going to have to pick between these three. And I think one of them go away. And it'd be difficult for me to imagine that the Raptors are going to be a luxury team, a tax team this year. And the easiest way out of the tax is either to dump one of those guys for, a trade exception and a first round pick, which I doubt they'll do, or trade RJ Barrett for a player who makes marginally less money. And I think that Herb Jones fits that bill. Now, obviously, Herb Jones is a better player than RJ Barrett, in my opinion, but there's also a lunatic or a lunatic front office that is currently running the New Orleans Pelicans. And that group, maybe that group led by Joe Dumars, sees RJ Barrett as a better player than Herb Jones. Who knows? You have no idea. Honestly, nobody in the world that I can think of with two brain cells would have done that Derrick Queen trade, but they did it. So they're telling me that they value something that most of the league doesn't, which is isolation scoring, upgrade talent, whatever. So if you really start to shop a 20-point per game scorer who's like 25-5 to a guy like Joe Dumars, who might have a different set of values in terms of how he sees the game, how he sees space, who's maybe stuck in 2002. I'll tell you right now, build a time machine right now, go back to 2002. RJ Barrett is a franchise player. In 2002, RJ Barrett is really a franchise cornerstone type of player. Move to 2025, the league is passing you by a little bit. So again, when you see a guy who maybe is running a front office and sees the game in a more archaic, dated, prehistoric way, like a Joe Dumars, where he's, again, like I'll bring you back to Jack McCloskey, right? The Toronto Raptors in 2005 drafted Rafael fucking Arujo. Oh, Lord. With the 8th overall pick to watch Andre Iguodala go 9th because Jack McCloskey is a fucking dinosaur. Rest in peace. I think he's dead. My point is, like these people, they learn the game, they envision the game, and the game passes them by. I think Joe Dumars is in that arc. I think he's been in that arc for like 15 years where I think the league just passed him by. If there's a player on this team that he will value more than other people, it's probably RJ Barrett. So, maybe RJ Barrett to the Pelicans would make a lot of sense. And who knows? Another thing that I think was a hallmark of the Masai era was treating players really well. I think with the exception of Chris Boucher and Gary Trent, they had a lot of affection for players. They did right by players. They wanted to send players to destinations that those players were, well off in. I think the Spurs, there was a story about Derrick White where he goes and he learns from Greg Popovich as he's been traded, and they said, "Don't worry, we didn't fuck you over. We sent you to the Boston Celtics." the implication there is we could have fucked you over and sent you to the Charlotte Hornets. Well, I think the Raptors have had this mantra when it comes to their key players, right? Especially ones that they have strong emotional attachments to, like a Pascal Siakam. They didn't want to send him to Sacramento. He didn't want to go to Sacramento. They didn't send him to Atlanta. He didn't want to go to Atlanta, so they sent him to the place he wanted to go to. They allowed Fred to go out with dignity. They allowed Kyle to go out with dignity. They did this. They did right by their players. We don't know if that was a Masai Ujiri thing. I'm not saying Bobby Webster's more cutthroat. I'm not saying Bobby Webster's a bad person. I'm just saying Masai's gone. He's not secretly running this team. So maybe the Raptors no longer operate under the guise of, well, we'll only send players to places that are nice for them. Maybe now it's open season for RJ Barrett and Grady Dick and Ochai and Brandon and IQ and whoever, frankly, Jakob, whatever. Maybe they're going to take a more cutthroat approach to trades. And maybe that could be for the better. So overall, I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the Raptors, but I think more than anything, the reason that I'm optimistic about the Raptors is because I don't think these players on this roster, from Scotty Barnes to Brandon Ingram to RJ Barrett to Emmanuel Quickley to Grady Dick to Jacoby Walter, any of these players, even Colin Murray Boyles, who played last year in South Carolina, I don't think any of these players are going to play the same role they did last season. And so the question becomes, who are you when I optimize your role? That's a mystery. That's a complete mystery. You don't know what Scotty Barnes is going to be like, more of an off-ball, easy shots role, catch and shoot role, because you haven't seen it for a year and a half. And over that year and a half, he's developed a lot. You don't know what Brandon Ingram's going to be like more as a pure scorer, because the last 3-4 years, he's been more of a hybrid power, a point forward. You don't know what Emmanuel Quickley is going to be like more off the ball, because the last time you saw it, he was a New York Knick. You don't know what Colin Murray Boyles would be like more as a finisher, because you watched for 2 years as he was a creator for South Carolina. Again, when you start to look at players for what they can be, you develop. When you try to win, you're more or less concerned with what can you do. And I think what you can do versus what you could do hypothetically 3 years from now, it's a more concentrated approach. It's a more cut and throat approach. The better shooter will play. The better cutter will play. The better defender will play. The better finisher will play. The better player will play. Did that happen last year? No, that did not. Because if the better player was supposed to play, Chris Boucher should have played. But that's not what's going to happen this year. I think for this year, the better player will play. The Raptors also didn't extend their starters into heavy rotation minutes last year. Maybe that will change this year as well. So to summarize, the East is worse. The Raptors players are better than you think they are. This team has great chemistry. The development reps are over, and now it's winning reps time. And I think that will change the focus of this team. There's continuity from last year, which most of the teams that are projected to be top of the East do not enjoy. There is a massive, massive, massive imbalance between East and West. And then there is the unprecedented, unquestioned. Let me rephrase that. There's the unpredictability of growth that can come when this many of your players are under 25 years old. If you follow us on X, definitely check out the post that we made. It was actually a Raptors post, which is really funny. Hang on, let me pull it up here for a sec. So, speaking of team, here's some team chemistry.
Hey. Went to the corner.
Yeah, Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley are ready for the World Cup. In terms of the youngest teams by usage last season, look at the 8 youngest teams in the NBA per usage. Wizards, Jazz, Pelicans, Blazers, Hawks, Raptors, Nets, Bulls. You know what they all had in common? None of them made the playoffs last year. Here's how many players on the Raptors are currently under 25. Scotty Barnes, Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shed, David Roddy, Ochai Agbaji, AJ Lawson, Jamison Battle, Ulrich Shamshi, Jonathan Mulbo, Elijah Martin, Chucky Hepburn, Grady Dick, RJ Barrett, and Colin Murray Boyles. That is a lot of players. The only players on this team that missed that mark are Emmanuel Quickly, 26, Sandro Mamakhelishvili, 26, Brandon Ingram, 27, Eugene Amarui, who probably won't make the team at 28, Jakob Pertl, 29, Garrett Temple, 53. Sorry. Sorry, Garrett. Fun fact, Garrett's like my age, but still, jokes aside, this is an insanely young team. This is a team that has a lot of growth. This is a team that can get better a lot quicker than people realize. And it just so happens that this is a team that added a player onto their roster who addresses their biggest need. People are sleeping on the Toronto Raptors. Don't be one of those people. We'll have you locked and loaded every single game this season. I hope you'll tune in and let's keep it positive, of course. But honestly, positivity is a reality. Nobody is lying about the Raptors here. No one is denying that, there are some holes, that there are some weaknesses on this roster, that there might be some lineup issues, and we'll deal with it. But I do think this team is going to be good. I think the defensive uptick we saw last year is real. Let's get to the Soul Super Chat of the day, which comes from Tybo. And he says, hi, Rob. How are you? Would you take Colin Slater? Good question. Let me throw a call-in link here and I'll leave it open for 2 minutes. If somebody calls in, dope. If nobody calls in, we good. So I'm going to drop the call-in link here. And if somebody wants to call in, you can call in. So this is a 1, 2, 3. Okay. You are officially on the clock. You have 2 minutes to call in. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. As always, I believe you called in last time as well. Nice Win said good callers only. That is true. So, yes, you have 2 minutes to call in. We haven't really done that many call-in shows, in fairness. I should use this time to plug some stuff. I will finally start making content for the Spurs channel later this month. So it is happening 100% in August. I'm not sure if it's going to be mid-August or late August, but we will start that up. That's going to be cool. We will be on playback tonight watching the WNBA. It will be the Fever versus the Indiana Favors versus the Chicago Sky. Okay, we got Tybo calling in. Hey man, what's up?
Oh, hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Okay, yeah. So I just had one question about when you were talking about our lineup. Essentially, I'll make it quick. I mean, I got bored rewatching I got bored just when no NBA basketball. I was rewatching a live of yours, and you're talking about spacing and portability and lineups. And that was right after the Raps tried to acquire Drew Holiday and Derrick White. I mean, with how the Raptors are kind of stacking up on players with somewhat similar prototypes and whatnot. I mean, maybe that's not a fair thing to say, but I do
Who's similar?
I guess our forwards and our bigs especially. I know we're a bit small, but players like CMB, Mobo, Ulrich, of course he's a project, but Scotty, all of our bigs and our forwards, I think obviously not all of them, but I do think that there is quite an overlap in that sort of range of positions that I would say. I mean, would you disagree with that? Okay.
I think they're different. I think Mobo is different than Scotty and different than CMB. They are united in their strengths, which is to say they're multi-positional, long arm defenders with good high feel. That's not a bad thing.
For sure.
Right. And they don't all have to play together. Right. They don't all have to play together. I think Scotty is more of a mid-range guy. I think CMB and Mobo haven't really shown a great deal of ability there, but CMB is definitely a much better finisher at this stage of his career than Mobo. Mobo is a much better point of attack defender. CMB, I think, is a much better team defender. So, they have different strengths. Whereas I understand what you're saying, though. It's like, 6'7", long arms, can't shoot again, but that's the surface. There's a lot underneath the hood that makes them different. But I get your point.
I think there was definitely a lot more nuance than I think like the level that I can see the game definitely like missed, because I almost had this suspicion that, especially right after they drafted CMB instead of, I was a big fan of Carter as well. It just made me kind of suspect, like, what if the Raptors are kind of trying to, like employ like a cast your net wide strategy in this big draft haul that they've had. You just pick a bunch of players with, obviously, I'm not definitely not saying they're all the same. I'm saying they have similar strengths and overlapping strengths. And to just get them to compete with each other, learn and grow from each other. And since Scotty's prime is likely still in like, like a year or two, I don't know. I think it could be as fast as a year. I don't, maybe if we're optimistic. You could say that by like year 3 from that draft haul that we've had, you could kind of almost pick and choose who from your draft haul kind of blossomed into what you like most, what fits with what fits with what's going on, what's happening now, and kind of time this almost to kind of trade the few that you maybe don't decide to go with for like championship consolidating pieces. Like, what do you think of like the pros and cons of this sort of imaginary strategy, or whether it's even like a realistic one to begin with? I don't know. What do you think?
I think you've put players next to Scotty who work with Scotty. Now, obviously, he's a good playmaker. He's a good defender. So, you need movement shooters around that type of player. I think they've looked at other players that they maybe liken to Scotty. Like, I know some people laugh at this, but someone like Nikola Jokic, which is something that Darko has talked about a lot. And who are the players that worked with Nikola Jokic? Well, Aaron Gordon, there's your CMB, and Jonathan Mobo. Granted, I understand Aaron Gordon's better than those players, but I'm just saying, like, that's the archetype. Then you have your Michael Porter Jr. Well, I understand, Brandon Ingram is not Michael Porter Jr., but, you could squint your eyes and convince yourself that a tall shooter, if you use him a little bit differently. Then there are your movement shooters and your 3-and-D defenders. So that's your, Ochai Abaji fits into the Contavious Caldwell Pro. Ironically, Jacoby Walter was compared to him. And then you have your Emmanuel Quickly, which, I mean, okay, IQ and RJ are not Jamal Murray, but you could see some parallels in the hybrid guard, who can sort of score between those two. So again, it's not a tit for tat thing. You're not exactly replacing all those players, but those are the player types that work with a Nikola Jokic. So if you were to think of it from the strategy that you're talking about, which is, you just have like kind of a Hunger Games style tryout, where you get 3 movement shooters, you get 3 undersized bigs, you get 2 3-and-D wings, and then you just say, okay, we just need 1 of you, 2 of you, 2 of you, and go. I think that's probably the right way to approach basketball, team building overall. I really do. If you think you have, like, for instance, I hypothetically, I'm trying to build around Cade Cunningham in Detroit. Well, I probably need an off-ball guard in the style of Steph Curry, right? That would be great to play next to him. Maybe a guy who can do a little bit on and off the ball. Now, obviously, Steph Curry is not available, and there aren't Steph Currys don't grow on trees. So maybe I look at a player who does some things that what he does, and then I try to find 2 or 3 of those guys and see which one of them it works best. Obviously, I need a 3-and-D wing. I need spacing. I need wider angles for him to attack. I maybe need a stretch big. Like, these are archetypes. And some people accuse me of playing basketball on a spreadsheet, but that's really how team building should be done, in my opinion. You need to identify archetypes and synergistic, points that you need to hit as a basketball team. Yeah. Any final thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts. I think, obviously, it would be a nice problem to have if we had enough draft capital to really run through the Hunger Games for like every role we'd like. It would be nice. It would be nice, but I'm sure it's not realistic. But final thought, I think, just about Scotty. I think I'm just so curious, like, what you really envision his like prime, like beast Scotty to be like. And I know that it's lame being like, oh, like, hey, player comp, blah blah, but if you're open to kind of throwing out a few just for like entertainment purposes and like curiosity purposes, like please feel free.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, where do you start with the comparisons, right? Like, there's so many players you could compare him to, depending on which way you think his development's going to go. Whether it's going to go more wing, more guard, or more, or more of a big development. Some names that I've seen thrown out in the past are guys like Chris Webber, Bam Adebayo, Jaren Jackson Jr. Um, those are the big comparisons. But I've also seen guys like Scottie Pippen, Magic Johnson. So I think probably something between those players. His own head coach has compared him to Nikola Jokic. Like, I mean, who in the world can you compare to Magic Johnson, Scottie Pippen, and Nikola Jokic? You can compare him, very confusing player, basically. Very credible people have compared him to all three players. Like, he's had a coach in Leonard Hamilton who compared him to Scottie Pippen, Magic Johnson hybrid, and now he has a coach who compares him to Nikola Jokic, and that's the point. It's like, this is just a really weird basketball player, and it's going to be different to build around him. I think in his prime, he could be a 26, 10, and 8 guy. I don't see him touching the heights of like LeBron, but I definitely think he can be a lot more efficient than he currently is. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks,
All right,
man.
man. All right. Cheers.
For the lives. Cheers. Bye.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we got Bruce Does Sports. Bruce, what's up, man?
How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
Just questions on like Pascal over Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, like Pascal has his own style, and then you have Ingram who just like plays within the system. For teaching, towards Scotty, I feel like Ingram would be a great play style for Scotty, opposed to Pascal's just wild, all over the place style. How do you feel on that?
I'm not sure I understand the setup of the question. So you're
Sorry.
framing Pascal as a wild player and Ingram as
Yes.
a system player?
Yes.
I don't agree with that.
Well, just like his play style, like individually. Like
What
Pascal
makes-
is
okay,
very
so-
all over the place. Like he learned later in life,
Mhm.
and Ingram's been in the system. So like just shooting wise, he could teach Scotty to be more persistent, opposed to Pascal all over the place. Does that make sense?
I think I disagree with the notion that Siakam is all over the place. I think Siakam is very much a system player. I actually think it's opposite. I think it's Ingram who's a little bit all over the place. Like, I think I understand what you're saying. Are you trying to say that Ingram is more polished?
Yes, like less like I can't explain. Like Pascal is very good. I love him.
Okay, let me ask you a
Raptor
few
fan.
questions.
Yeah.
If you had to, like, let's just say you're a random team, like let's say you're the Detroit Pistons, and you can pluck either one of these players to win now, who are you taking?
I'm taking Pascal.
Okay. If you're starting a team from scratch, you have no players, and this is the first pick, and you're an expansion team, which player are you picking?
Pascal.
Okay. If your team is defensively weak, I'm just curious, man. I'm curious. I have no idea where you're going with this. So if your team is defensively weak,
No, you beat.
yeah. So I mean, I'm not trying to believe me. I'm not a person that you're gonna have to convince that Brandon Ingram's awesome. I think Ingram is friggin' awesome.
The only thing I was thinking, sorry to cut you off, was just for like the aspect of like how Pascal has the ball, he's moving the ball. Pascal is wild, like with his own play style. It's not give the ball away whilst he's making the move. But Brandon Ingram is like very good at giving the ball away if he's failing.
Okay.
But Brandon Ingram, yes, I'd like for our play style, of course not. I would not agree. Like with Scotty Barnes, yes.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's a weird thing. I'm probably in the minority. I actually think Ingram's a better player.
For instance, I do too. But Pascal. So
like we were having this discussion about Kyrie versus CP3 the other day, right? About who's more skilled and who's better, and we on player's choice, and we come to the conclusion that CP3 is better, but I can understand the argument for why some people think Kyrie is better. It's very similar for BI and Siakam. Yes. So BI is more talented and Siakam is better.
I was only thinking like teaching wise.
Teaching?
I feel like Ingram at this stage needs a guy like Scotty, because Zion, big whiff, right? Wiffle Babette. But I'm thinking like he'd be a better teacher just for like Scotty's style. It's not move first, get the ball down. It's slow down a little bit and put some skill into it.
Okay. So, okay, let me ask you one more question. If you could trade right now, if you could trade Brandon Ingram for Siakam, would you do it?
No, not right now. No.
Okay, so what you're coming to is
if we
BI
kept
is better for
Pascal-
Scotty than Siakam was.
Pardon me?
So what you're saying is BI is better for Scotty than Siakam was.
At this moment, to correct the Freddie not giving the ball, yes.
Okay, I agree with that. I think Brandon Ingram is just a very talented player who has never really had a system which fully unlocked him. Whereas I think Siakam has been in great systems his whole life.
Yes,
for
and
him.
plus like the later gravital of like the fact that they played later in life.
Sure,
Like,
I mean
it's
there's
not the height
that's
or the
part of
difference
it.
of size.
I mean,
Sorry,
Siakam's
but-
also older.
Yes, which to me is not big on the NBA.
I mean, he's
I feel
3
like
years
Brandon
older.
Ingram just can give what he's been soaking in. He's been with Zion, who's just not been there.
Mhm.
Right? It's just not been there. And then there's Scotty, who could be what Zion is in real life. Like a taller player that can actually score, can also rebound, can also assist.
Right.
And Brandon has that life. He's set now because he can give it to him, take it from him, and just score.
Right.
Right? Being an actual player opposed to being the guy. We have 3 guys that could be the guy. And I like Brandon Ingram with them. I like it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what BI will look like with Darko because we have seen Darko change everybody's style, right?
Yes,
Like he changed Scotty's style, he changed he changed RJ's style, he changed Quickly's style. I will argue very clearly, by the way, by large margin, Ingram is the most talented offensive player he's coached in his time in Toronto. No disrespect to Scotty. Obviously, Scotty is younger and his game still has jumps to go, and maybe he'll get there someday.
He's upper
right
body
now,
heavy.
Yeah,
he bounces very high with the ball. Brandon Ingram is like a Kyrie in a sense. He can put the ball low,
right,
but also pull it up and shoot it high like Kevin Durant, right?
Exactly. And like the quote from Bobby Webster was, "This is the most talented scorer we've had here since Kawhi."
Yes.
And honestly, no cap on that. 100%. He is the most talented scorer.
Less defense. Less assist,
oh, hell yeah. But scoring, like just
Scoring?
pure scoring, is the most talented pure scorer you've had since Kawhi. So, look, I think BI's shot diet, for anyone who watched him in New Orleans, very inefficient shot diet, but very good at those shots. I mean, he's 99th percentile in mid-range shot volume, 75th, 76th percentile mid-range shot. 99th in volume. I think it was 76th percentile in efficiency.
Very close.
I would say
Very
100th
close, yeah.
percentile in difficulty.
So may
had
I
the
ask
hardest
your
shots.
take
Go ahead.
on Jakob Poeltl being very so? I feel like he's very well at being a guy that can shoot within the paint.
Mhm.
He's very good at being the guy in the paint offensively. How do you feel about him on the defense end?
Overrated.
Right? Like he's not quick back. He's not. So like, what do you think we need to do in our center position?
Well, I mean, you signed him to a very expensive deal, so you're probably stuck with him. I think if at some point Ulrich becomes a better player than him a couple years from now, that would be a huge thing because then he's settled into a backup role. I just think he doesn't provide enough pressure at the rim. I think his value, ironically, is most felt on the offensive end, where I think he is brilliant. Brilliant as a screener, great as a release guy, good as a playmaker, secondary, short roll passer, roller.
His little shots.
Yeah, the efficiency at the rim. I mean, too many people get caught up in the he can't shoot stuff. No, he is more of a. If I had to like lean offense versus defense, there's only one player in the starting lineup who's more defensively oriented, and that is Scotty Barnes.
Yes.
Every other player's spectrum of skill is more offensively leaning, which is kind of ironic because a lot of people think that this team won't finish top 15 offensively, but they'll definitely finish top 15 defensively. And I think that's maybe.
I find a lot of people play 2K, so they're like, "Oh, we need to trade these guys." For instance, if you put this team there, they're making the same difference as you trade everybody and reposition it. My thought on this team is at least fifth in the East.
Fifth, at
Yeah.
least. What's the
Yes.
highest they can be?
Oh, I mean, 3 to 4. I wouldn't go that. I would not go that high. But 3 to 4 is like the highest. I just feel like the difference of scoring could make a difference, but I have not seen no footage of nothing yet. They're all locked in. They're all playing together probably. They're all training together. Must be something going on.
Right.
I haven't seen nothing. Because I remember last year I was working out in the gym because I play football for a living. And there was stuff with Scotty and his trainer. There's nothing this year. Right?
Yeah, they're very locked in. They are together. Like a lot of them right now are together in Greece right now. They've been there for a few days. I mentioned it earlier in the live. Like a lot of the young guys, they got together in Houston with Jamal Shed. They were doing. They've just been like circuiting mini camps and stuff. And that's one of the advantages. The fact that the Raptors have been, out of the playoffs. Like they didn't make the playoffs, so they got an extended off season. So they were together in Vegas. They planned out the entire offseason for all these guys really well. That's cool, I think they're doing a great job. Anyways, any final thoughts, man?
Before I go, like, how's your film school going? All that film stuff?
Festival?
Yeah.
Film festival is going well. I think 2 more days until our summer deadline for submissions, and we'll start sifting through that.
Me and my dad came by last year to see your short films there. It was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, did you end up saying hi to me?
No, we couldn't. No, not through everything, but we went through.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
We're from Alberta, so it was pretty cool to come by and just check by, and it's cool.
Oh, that's dope, man.
Because last year, the Toronto Raptors came here, and it was pretty sick.
That's dope, man. Well, thank you so much for the support for Pensar basketball,
man. I
but
wish
also
the best to you. And just so you know, man, you look pretty good without the beard, and I'm sorry for your sorrows there, eh? And love from Edmonton.
So thanks, sorry buddy. For your what though?
Sorry for your beard sorrows.
Oh, beard sorrows.
I can't grow any, by the way, so I don't know if you can see me. But
okay. I when I was younger, I ended up getting cleated in the face, soccer cleats, and then I didn't manage the wound very well. This is when I was in grade 7 or 8, and then I went out the next day and played like 8 hours in the sun with no sunblock, no sunscreen, no hat. I ended up getting like a whole bunch of like scars on my face. And then when I was 25, I want to say 25, 26, I ended up having a vase fall on my head and got 39 stitches across my head. So I just have like a whole bunch of scars all over my face, and I'm trying to fix that this summer. So that's, one of the reasons I wanted to get rid of the beard.
A good thing to do, cold water on the face.
Sure.
Help open your pores.
Yeah.
But real quick, how old are you by chance?
Just take a guess.
32?
Older.
36.
Older.
42.
No, younger. I'm 37.
37. Okay. Yeah, I was born in 94, so just wanted to ask, because
you're
not a lady. And I hope you have a lovely day, buddy.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for it, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peace. All right. The question, am I watching Eurobasket? I am not yet. I will be very soon. I will be watching Eurobasket. Anyways, yes. Some of you can probably tell through the camera that my face is a little bit torn up right now. I will share the details of all of this in September, take you through exactly what I'm doing. My entire forehead is very, very cut up right now, which is why the hat is extra low. And I am thinking a lot about life design right now. A lot. I think a lot of us go through life without really thinking too much about the intention behind what we want to do with life. Like we're not necessarily thinking about like, this is what I want my wardrobe to look like. This is what I want my bank account to look like. I think we're just kind of reacting to it. We're just going through the motions of life, right? And I just had this moment where I was just like, I'm tired of being Scarface. I'm tired of having, scars all over my face. I don't like the beard. I don't like the beard. I don't like long hair. I don't like long hair. I brought this up in the last live too. I don't like long hair. I don't like having long hair. If I had it my way, I had a crew cut. So now I have a crew cut. So yes, I'm getting very intentional about that kind of stuff, but I'm also getting intentional about day design, like my life design, day design. How many, if you could draw your ideal day, what would it be? Does it involve an hour of reading? Well, some people, yeah, it involves an hour of reading, and maybe it involves half an hour at the gym, and maybe it involves having a pool in your backyard. But then a lot of people, they're kind of like, well, I don't have enough money for a pool, and I don't have enough time to read, and I can't get to the gym because I got kids, and your life design is falling apart. So I think you need to be very intentional with your life design, and I'm getting very intentional with mine. So I hope you will do the same. No sugar continues. I'm feeling much better. I tell you, I went through call it a hang on one second. I went through some old Facebook pictures. Do this if you ever forget like what's been going on in your life and stuff, right? I want to show you guys something. So this is really old school me. One sec. So this is an old picture I found of myself, which is crazy now that I think about it. This is another old picture that I found of myself. I look so, so, so very different. And this is what I looked like right after I ended up having my surgery. You can see immediately I started to cover my face, and I did not want to, it's almost like I didn't want to be seen anymore, right? Because I had like this horrendous scarring all over my face. And that's a slow process of recovery, man. That's a slow process of recovery. And I look forward to getting back to this person. You know, you can sort of see the scars there a little bit, but just a person who is more in shape, a person who is um, more put together, a person who is just, I don't know. It's interesting in the context of looking through my pictures, especially this one. I also found one of Catherine, which was really funny. It was literally posted. Some of you will remember Catherine, who was the person who did the neuroscience video. So she's gonna kill me for this one, but this is Catherine way back when. So she looked very different back then too. So, anyways, I mean, yeah. Y'all want to see a picture of me when I was 13 years old? Man, this is 13-year-old me. Isn't that crazy? That's me when I was 13. And this is me when I was 5. I look like a haunted child. That's me when I was 5 years old. Crazy. Anyways, um, random slideshow over. I said, you look grown at 13, bro. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah. So I went through some pretty horrific shit when it came to my face. I've had stitches 9 times, and then I had a brain surgery, and I've had a near death accident on my forehead, and I've had the cleat thing to my face. So I think it was just time for me to deal with this shit. So I'm gonna deal with it, and hopefully by September you're gonna see me looking a lot better. Right? Like my face has just been through so much, bro. Like honestly, my face, my head, it's just like every fucking 2 years of my life, I've had like a giant gash on my face or on my head for some reason. I mean, you live life, right? Like shit, they say women love scars. So yeah, but I just thought that it was time to get rid of some of them. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if it gets better, and hopefully it will. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. Enjoy. Have a great one. And thanks for tuning in. Appreciate y'all.